Friends, you've probably heard about how great life is in the Carolinas. Mild winters, beautiful scenery, and a booming housing market. But what if I told you that moving here from the Midwest might not be as perfect as it seems? I've lived in Charlotte actually 6 years now, which is crazy, after moving from Kansas City, Missouri, which is in the Midwest United States, the heartland. And while I absolutely love it here in Charlotte and Fort Mill, South Carolina, there are some things I wish I had known before making the move. Now, some of these regrets are going to surprise you, and they could really seriously impact your decision to move to the Carolinas. By the way, pause. I want you right now to look at my phone number on the screen and give me a call if you are thinking about buying, selling, or investing in the Carolinas anytime soon, or if you know someone who is. Now, I'll get calls and texts from people like you every single day, so go ahead and reach out. I would be happy to help you on your real estate journey and answer questions about life here in the Carolinas. All right, let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the 7 regrets I've had since moving from the Midwest to the Carolinas. Number 1, let's talk about cost of living. So everyone knows what cost of living is. That's essentially how much your groceries cost, how much it costs to own or rent a home, how much it costs for utilities each month, and it's basically all the costs that it takes to live a life in a certain area. So cost of living varies greatly from the Midwest to the Carolinas. Really gives people some sticker shock when they move from somewhere like the Midwest to Charlotte, for example, especially when it comes to housing and daily expenses. So housing costs in Charlotte, North Carolina, for you analytical folks, here's some stats. Charlotte, North Carolina is approximately 5.7% higher than in Kansas City, Missouri. Housing alone is about 35.1% more expensive in Charlotte than in KC, which is absolutely crazy. I can definitely attest with this. I miss the cheaper rents, the cheaper homes, and everything that has to do with homes and housing. For example, you can find about a 3-bedroom house for around $250 to $300K in Kansas City, depending on where it's at. But in Charlotte, if you want something like that in a decent neighborhood, same house is going to cost you closer to $400,000, depending on the neighborhood. Property taxes are also generally higher in the Carolinas, especially in Mecklenburg County in particular. The utility costs on average are about $190 in Charlotte, whereas in Kansas City, they're actually at $285. So it's actually more expensive for utilities in Kansas City. Of course, that's partially because of what we'll talk about in a bit. The snowy and colder winters are going to run up your furnace and HVAC bills. So that's probably partially or mostly why. Now, grocery prices are about 5 to 10% higher in Charlotte than in Kansas City. Gas prices also tend to be higher in Charlotte, and dining out and entertainment costs, I can definitely attest to those being more in Charlotte, just because it's so growth oriented and there's so many people moving here. Things are just more expensive in general. Now, the second regret, or I would say thing I miss about Kansas City, has to do with the weather, actually. Now, I remember growing up and having multiple, a bird just dove down and caught a fish in the water. That's crazy. I don't know if you can see that. That's cool to see. So anyway, weather-wise, you do have a lot more snowy winters in Kansas City than you do in Charlotte. I do really miss that, honestly. I miss the white Christmases. I remember at least 2 white Christmases we had where it actually snowed on Christmas, and many more where we at least had snow on the ground during Christmas Day, even if it didn't snow during the day. So we don't get that in Charlotte, unfortunately. We can't really go sledding too much. I think 4 to 5 years ago was the last sort of major snowstorm. It was only, I think, 3, 4, 5 inches, and that was like insanity for here. But I do miss that. I regret, not being able to have some more snow. Humidity, it is a little bit more humid in Charlotte than in Kansas City, but honestly, the humidity in Kansas City is pretty strong too. So I do miss some of the lower humidity. I don't miss how dry it is in the Midwest, though. It is a really dry weather. You get dry skin in the Kansas City area and Midwest because of the fluctuation in temperature changes. I would say that in Charlotte, it's more steady and constant in terms of weather and temperature, whereas in Kansas City, it's kind of really extremes on either side. It gets really cold in the winter and sometimes even in the negatives. That's on the extreme side. Then also get in the hundreds in the summer, which is pretty extreme. Whereas in Charlotte, it does get hot. But yeah, overall, I would say Charlotte has a more mild climate. Kansas City is a little more extreme. You have more of the severe ups and downs. Now let's talk about some traffic and transportation challenges. I do miss the commute times in Kansas City versus Charlotte. You do have a much shorter commute time in KC. I miss being able to drive somewhere and only took 30 minutes, and that felt like driving across the world. Whereas in Charlotte here, anytime I go to a showing or an open house or an appointment somewhere, 30 minutes is just your normal drive here. So it's a lot different on that side of things. I would say that public transportation is also more expensive in Charlotte than in KC. I believe the average public transport ticket costs about 83 or 85, and then in Kansas City it's 53, so you're gonna be a little bit more in Charlotte than KC. Walkability wise, neither of these towns are super walkable. You're gonna need a car to drive anywhere, so there's not much difference there. Now let's talk about cultural and social differences. This is something I might miss the most out of everything. I miss how laid back the Midwest folks are. Charlotte, there's just a ton of hustle and bustle. People are always in a rush to get somewhere, do something, go to meetings, do all these things. Whereas in the Midwest, people are sitting on the porches, waving at you, saying hello, waving at you while you're driving. I remember growing up, I'd always just wave at people while, I'm driving places. And if I'm in the country or something, and people just wave back because it's just, what you do in the Midwest. But here, you don't really do that. At least not commonly. I've tried to do it a few times and I got some weird looks in return. So I think it's more of a Midwest thing. And I think that's just the way the culture in Kansas City and the Midwest is compared to Charlotte. It's a lot more laid back. People are, I'd say, more hospitable and just more chill overall. My wife can attest to this for sure. She's lived here her whole life, especially in the last 5-10 years with all the transplants and relocators. It's just changed a lot. And yeah, overall, I would say that Charlotte's entertainment scene centers around breweries, restaurants, local events. The city's rapid growth has just made it easier to meet new people, but you're not really going to form as many lasting connections because people move in and out of this place all the time. It's just harder to find, I guess, long-term friends because of how hustly and bustly it is. At least that's been our experience. Not true for everyone in every case. Now, diversity, of course, you're going to have people from all walks of life in both of these places. I would say a little bit more in Charlotte, though, because you have people moving here from different places all the time, nationally and globally. I would say a big thing I miss in terms of the culture is the sports culture in Kansas City. The sports culture in Kansas City, because you have the Kansas City Chiefs, which I've been a fan of my whole life. And it's just a huge culture around the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City. Whereas in Charlotte, you have the Panthers and you have, some other Charlotte Hornets. And there's just not as much buzz, no pun intended, around the Hornets and around the, Panthers, because you just don't have people that have lived here your whole life. So I don't think you have as much loyalty as you do in Kansas City because, football and baseball are just, it's like a part of who you are if you live in Kansas City in the Midwest or anywhere near there. It's like one of the big things to do, whereas in Charlotte, there's a trillion and one things to do. All right, fifth thing I regret or miss about Kansas City and about the Midwest versus Charlotte is the pace of life. So I think, as I was mentioning before, it's just a lot more chill in Kansas City in the Midwest than it is in Charlotte. I just say that Charlotte always has something going on. Like, there's always something to do, always a place to go, always a business thing to do. Whereas in Kansas City, you just sometimes have to think of things to do yourself, especially as a kid growing up. I remember we would just go driving places. Like, we didn't really have a bunch of events to do. We would just drive down back roads and find things to do and have fun and be kids. But in Charlotte, it's just, I don't think there's as much of that because of, the hustle and bustle of how it is here. Now, city growth, Kansas City's population only has been growing by 0.4% annually, whereas Charlotte's population has been increasing by 2% annually. Work-life balance wise, the professional environments in Charlotte are more competitive. So there's just always something going on in the banking and tech sectors. Weekend wise, I would say Charlotte's brewery and live music scene creates a lively weekend atmosphere. Whereas in the Midwest and Kansas City, I would say outdoor recreational options are more prevalent. I would say that, the Midwest has more of that because there's just more to do. And Kansas City is just a lot different. There's a lot more outdoor recreational opportunities than in Charlotte because the city is just so expansive and there's so much sprawl. Now, the sixth reason, or I would say thing I regret about moving from Kansas City to Charlotte, North Carolina, or the schools. I would say this isn't a big one, but it's one I threw in there because the schooling is a little bit different. I would say on average, you have some higher rated schools in Kansas City, more so than Charlotte. That being said, Charlotte does have some really amazing schools, but you have to be in the right district. You have to be in the right place. Overall, the CMS or Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools include some of the highest ranked schools in the state, but they also have some of the lowest ranked schools in the state, so it depends on where you're at. Now, school zoning and redistricting are very common. This confuses a lot of residents, of course, that are just moving here. Private and charter schools wise, Charlotte does have many of these that are really good. Of course, they're very expensive. Some tuitions a year can go up to $20,000, which is a decent amount of money for a family, especially if you have multiple kids in the school. And I would say North Carolina, you do have the option to apply for school choice, but demand is high, space is limited, schools are overcrowded because of all the people moving here. So I did enjoy my schooling experience in Kansas City. I obviously have not been to school in Charlotte because I moved here after I graduated, but I think I would say, Kansas City schools are really solid. I went to several different ones and they're all very well rated, and they weren't as expensive because things in Charlotte are just more expensive. Okay, so last thing I want to mention while we walk through these lovely woods is number 7, which is I miss the food and the food culture, I would say, surrounding the food. So in Kansas City, barbecue is huge. Actually, Charlotte is somewhat known for its barbecue, but I would say not really. Kansas City is known for its baby back slow cooked ribs, known for its burnt ends, rich sauces. I would say Charlotte does have barbecue too, but it's more vinegar based and I would say less sweet overall. And the food scene in Charlotte is great. It does offer more seafood and southern style cuisine like shrimp and grits and pimento cheese. I will say something that shocked me when I first moved here is that you can get sweet tea anywhere. Wherever you go, you can get a really sweet tea, because we are in the South in theory. And in Kansas City, if you ask for a sweet tea, half the time they don't have sweet tea. They just have unsweet tea, or half the time when they do have sweet tea, it is not really sweet. It's more like one pellet of sugar in the tea, and they call that sweet tea, which isn't really sweet tea, in my opinion. Mexican and Asian food options are growing, but the Midwest comfort food scene is harder to find in Charlotte. So yeah, overall, I do miss the food in Kansas City. I miss, kind of the more home style options they have there. Charlotte has some of that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just loyal to my hometown's home cooked food and the restaurants and food scene there. So overall, friends, that does wrap up my 7 biggest regrets, or I would say more so the 7 things I miss the most about the Midwest and Kansas City compared to where I live now in the Carolinas and Charlotte. And if you found this helpful, please do me a really big favor and click the like button in the bottom right of the screen. Go ahead and also subscribe to our channel for more insider info about the Carolinas, about living in South Carolina and North Carolina. All right, and the next thing is pause. Right now, I want you to reach out to me via the phone number on the screen in front of you, because if you are thinking about buying, selling, or investing in a home here in the Charlotte or Upper South Carolina area, I want you to go and reach out right now, because I'm here to help. I help folks like you make the move to our city every single week. And I talk to people about real estate in this area every single day, and it would be an honor to guide you through your next move. All right, and I want to thank you one more time for watching this video. I want you to have a blessed day, and I cannot wait to show you around our town very soon.